Now, welcome to another Let's Watch Some Star Wars. This time it is the 6th episode of Andor Season 2, titled What a Festive Evening. And once again, I'm just going to start rewatching the episode. I'll pause it pretty much during every scene, tell you what I think, what I like, what I don't like, and so on. And so, let us get right back to it. We start out on Steergard, which we've heard of multiple times now in the show, referenced multiple times. It is an Imperial naval base, or a planet where there is an Imperial naval base. It's kind of cool to put a name with a face, if you will. And Luthen is here to pick up Cassian after everything that has happened on Gorman. He's only been there a couple days, and Luthen is like, so you just made a decision after 2 days? You looked around a little bit, and that was it? And Cassian is like, hey, they weren't ready. There's no way. It's too late. They're building an armory. The Empire is building an armory. Everybody knows it, and if you expose it, you're not really accomplishing anything. So there's no reason to even go ahead with any kind of operation here, especially when the people aren't ready, and especially when things can go really bad for these people. And Luthen is like, yeah, but we need that planet in open rebellion. It's a wealthy planet, it's a well-known planet, it's gonna look good, or kind of bad for the Empire, depending on your point of view. And that's when Cassian asks him, it doesn't matter to you, does it? And he doesn't understand the question. That's what I really like about this scene. These are just two kind of opposite viewpoints. Like, Cassian understands Luthen, but Luthen doesn't seem to be able to understand Cassian's point anymore about the people here. Because when Cassian says it doesn't matter to you, Luthen is immediately like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? This matters a lot. This is a big planet. I was just saying, this is a planet we need on our side or in rebellion. And Cassian is implying the people, like, what are we doing to these people just to have them in open rebellion against the Empire? We are sacrificing them. We're sacrificing this planet, in a manner of speaking. And Luthen is just no longer able to see things or measure things in that way anymore on the individual level. He doesn't care about people, he cares about just the cause. He has long since accepted from that famous speech of his that there is going to be a high cost, that we have to do deplorable things, basically. We have to do horrible, horrible things, but in the long run, we're going to have victory and we're going to have a better galaxy again. And Cassian is like, well, what about if it does go up in flames? And Luthen is simply like, well, it'll burn very brightly. Even if this goes really bad, even if all these people are killed, it is a beacon to the rest of the galaxy about how bad the Empire is. Again, he no longer measures wins and losses and how many people live or die. He measures everything in, is this going to further the cause and eventually lead to, hopefully, a victory over the Empire? Then we get a really quick scene between Luthen and Clea. Luthen is contacting home and telling her, hey, this buyer isn't taking the deal. And she's like, we already knew that. Basically saying to him that we knew Cassian wasn't going to go for this, so we're sending in somebody else. And then it, of course, cuts to Vel on Gorman. One of the Gorman resistance approaches her and asks if you're visiting friends, and she says, I have friends everywhere. That is kind of the code word of the rebellion that we found out in the last episode and was the name of the last episode. And again, she's here because she's going to do it even if Cassian won't. We're then back to Coruscant, back to Cassian returning home. He's at their apartment complex, essentially, and before he even goes in to talk to Bix, I like that he's walking through the halls and you can hear very loud music playing, you can hear a baby crying, and it's like, yep, this is apartment life. Anyway, Cassian returns home. He's happy to see Bix. She's happy to see him. They're very happy to be together again. And Cassian then learns that Luthen came for a visit and was going to ask Bix to do a job, a weapons appraisal, and Cassian's like, wait a second, he was here, but I was just with him. Why didn't he tell me he came over here and that he was going to send you on a mission by yourself? This is crazy. He knows you need a break. Cassian is all pissed off, and he's wondering, like, what is Luthen's game here? Why wouldn't Luthen mention this? Because he knew that this would be a topic of conversation between the two. And the scene ends with Cassian angry and about to probably go see Luthen, and yeah, he is about to. But before that, we get a scene between Perrin and Mon. They seem to be on their way home from some sort of party or some sort of gathering. They're in the speeder. And I like this scene for a couple different reasons. For one, it kind of maybe is a bit meta because here we have Perrin looking at this schedule, looking at all these events, and he's like, I don't know how we can do all of this. We've got so much to cover and only 3 days to do it in. And it kind of feels like maybe Tony Gilroy, again, having a meta moment, saying to us, the audience, there's so much I have to cram into just this one season. This was going to be 4 seasons. Now it's 1, and it's 4 separate arcs. That some things are going to have to be skipped or maybe rushed over a little bit. That intended or not, I also like the scene because it kind of shows that Mon and Perrin, even if they're not maybe deeply, madly in love with each other, they're a team. They work well together. Mon relies on Perrin. This actually goes back to the book Mask of Fear, the kind of prequel series that is coming out and dealing with a lot of the characters from Andor. In it, we learn that Perrin is actually pretty good at this sort of thing. He's good at working a crowd. He's good at just kind of being there and helping Mon, even if, again, it's not a passionate, deeply romantic love. But they do make a good team, and she does rely on him. And Perrin has been kind of a nicer, softer guy this season, it feels like, which makes me wonder, how exactly is this story going to end between these two? What goes wrong? Because we know next arc, Mon has to flee. That is going to line up with Rebels, the show Rebels, where we see Mon Mothma flee the Senate. She makes her speech. And we know, according to the timeline, it has to happen. So what happens to Perrin during all of that? Next up, sure enough, Cassian in the middle of the night goes to Luthen's shop and wakes him up. And immediately, Luthen is coming up with a story. You're here, you're delivering a medallion, you're going to leave immediately after. Always trying to cover all of his bases because that's just what Luthen does. But Cassian doesn't care. He's like, why didn't you tell me you went to see Bix and you knew I was going to find out? You knew she was going to tell me. And Luthen is like, I thought it might be interesting if she didn't tell you. Cassian is obviously angry because he's all worried about Bix. And Luthen, who we just established before, doesn't really think about the individual life or price of individuals anymore. Points out that he is soft on Gorman, but is willing to protect Bix at any cost, that he can't live this double standard life if he wants to do what they're doing. He kind of mocks him for saying at the end of season 1, how you should either kill me or take me in because I'm now all in. I don't care about anything else, when in reality, that's not true. And Luthen is trying to point out to him that you can't live both lives. You can't have Bix and you can't be in the rebellion unless Bix is in the rebellion just as much as you, essentially. And basically here, Luthen is almost trying to say that Bix has kind of become a liability for you, that you're not giving everything, that you're being reckless and careless, you're doing things that go outside our protocol, you're coming here in the middle of the night and endangering everything. And he's like, you got to figure this out, but Cassian's like, no, you're the one who's got to figure this out, you're the one who's got to help me with Bix. It's then on to ISB headquarters, where Partagaz is kind of upset because the success of Dr. Gorst has caught the attention of the Navy, who think he should be shared, so they went to the Emperor, and the Emperor agrees, and Gorst is now going to become a program, so they kind of lose exclusive rights to him, I guess you could say. So Partagaz is mad, and he wants to make sure that everything goes smoothly with Gorst, because the Imperial Navy is going to screw it up, they're going to fumble it. So he gives it to Lonnie, and I don't remember the guy's name, sorry, but it is Dedra's former assistant. He gives the task to them, and Lonnie's like, you're going to take this, and you know why you're going to take this? Well, you don't, but I'm going to feed this information to Luthen, and then Gorst is going to end up killed, and it's going to be on your watch that this happens. I love this scene. I love the subtlety here that, again, you have to pay attention, you have to put the pieces of the puzzle together to understand exactly why characters are doing the things they're doing sometimes. As I say, one of the many reasons I love this show. Then we get the reunion between Vel and Cinta on Gorman, and Vel is like, the only reason I agreed to take this mission is because you would be here, that Luthen promised he would send you, and Cinta is like, the only reason I'm here is because of you. Which sounds great and romantic right now, but unfortunately, if we look into the future and see what is going to happen at the end of this mission, something tells me that's going to haunt Vel for the rest of her life, that she requested Cinta be here, especially when she finds out that Cinta has changed, that there was an accident, as she says. We don't know what exactly that was. She talks about how it took her a while to recover. I don't know if that means physically, mentally, or probably a bit of both. Either way, you can just kind of see the hope in each other's eyes that perhaps this is the start of something new. This is the start of what Val has wanted all along and wanted Cinta to want all along as well. But of course, it's going to end rather tragically. There is then another very, very brief scene, this time back at ISB headquarters between Partagaz and Dedra, where apparently rebel activity is increasing on Gorman and they believe an incident is imminent. And Partagaz basically says to Dedra that your friend, quote-unquote, never can know the extent of what we're doing here. And she says, I remind myself of that all the time. And of course, they're talking about Cyril. And again, I'm really wondering how this all plays out between Cyril and Dedra, because, I mean, I think we can assume that Cyril is going to figure out that he was kind of a pawn here. that yes, he is willingly partaking in this mission, don't get me wrong, but that he doesn't exactly know what the true end result is, but he's going to find out. He's going to find out that Dedra just lied to him about everything and that he played a part in genocide, essentially, because I think the Gorman thing is going to go really, really south. Either way, what is Dedra thinking about all this? Does she worry about that? Does she actually care more about Cyril than she does her job? Something tells me she doesn't. I mean, I think she genuinely likes and cares about Cyril, maybe loves him, I don't know. But she feels kind of like a Luthen here, where she is willing to sacrifice people. She's not thinking about the individual cost anymore. She's just thinking about what the mission is, what the end result needs to be. And again, she's very Luthen in that way, where Cyril is maybe more like a Cassian, where, yes, he's for the cause, he likes to help and do what he feels he must, but I don't think he would be willing to sacrifice quite everything. We then get a Gorman resistance meeting that is being led by Vel. She is basically laying down the law. If we're going to do this mission, if we're going to try to hijack this transport, you are going to listen to everything I say without question. You are going to be good soldiers following orders. And a few of them have some difficulty with this. They have difficulty with just trusting random strangers showing up and giving them orders, which, yeah, you can understand. They are putting a lot on the line here, so you can understand their trepidation. Though you really feel like the overemphasis on following orders and doing everything exactly as we are telling you to implies one of them, at least, is not going to do that, and something is going to go very wrong because of one of them not following orders, which, yes, is going to happen. Moving right along, we see that Bix is once again doing drugs to try to cope with everything, and she's staring out the window, and the signal is going off, and Cassian wakes up, and she tells him, whatever it is, I'm coming along this time. And we, of course, know that this is the assignment to go and take out Dr. Gorst, that Lonnie has passed it on down because Luthen had said to Lonnie, I need information more frequently, so he has passed on the whole Dr. Gorst thing, and this is just setting up that mission we'll see at the end of this episode. We then get another rather interesting scene that maybe kind of parallels the Bix and Cassian thing, where Luthen has intentionally, it seems, kept these two separate because they're more valuable or just work better that way. It's less of a headache. We also see Cinta seems to regret some of the things in her past that she doesn't seem to be able to change, that she is not happy with the person she's been. And Vel tries to tell her, hey, I'm not a perfect person either. And they discuss how going forward, they're going to tell Luthen things are going to change. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it together. Again, much like Bix and Cassian. But of course, once again, we know a happy ending is not coming for these two, even though they get a happy ending of sorts at the end of this scene, I think. I then love the next scene. It's again a very brief scene, maybe 30 seconds again. But it is Mon in the Senate, and she's listening to basically the Pledge of Allegiance to the Empire. She's listening how we got to give our life and the honor and the glory to the Empire and all that sort of fun stuff, and she's just getting more and more angry because she is realizing, again, after the last few episodes where she's been trying to talk to some of the senators I think she's trusted or counted on before, who are no longer going to vote with her, who are kind of voting more power to the Emperor and the Empire. I think this is the moment she realizes that the Senate is lost. This is a lost cause. She cannot win this fight here. Too many of them have turned, too many of them are now loyal to the Emperor because they don't feel like there's any other choice. It's all about power. The Emperor has the power. They're not going to fight against him. They're going to fall in line. And again, I think she realizes here and now that this is futile. This isn't going to work here. I have to figure out something else. I might have to become someone or something else if we are eventually going to defeat this evil. It is then on to the Opera House for a party, and we see Mon and Perrin arrive, and they are greeted by none other than Bail Organa, who has been recast here. Apparently, from what we've heard, it just could not work out with Jimmy Smits. The timing, he was doing something else, and so they decided to recast him. I think the choice was good. I understand some people are upset, kind of asking, well, is this all we're getting out of Bail, this one scene where he greets them? Because if that's the case, why don't you just cut that out and you don't need to recast the character? I am going to assume, considering Bail's importance to the early rebellion, that this is not just a bit scene. He is going to be in here a lot more. He's going to be on Yavin. We know we're eventually moving on over to Yavin. So I'm assuming it wasn't just this one scene that they recast him for, that he's going to have a much more significant part. And if you don't like it, I get it. And if you're fine with it, well, that's cool too. I don't love the idea of recasting him, but I think, again, if he couldn't make it and we need Bail in here because he makes sense to be in here, well, it kind of is what it is. It's then right on back to ISB headquarters where Partagaz is clearing out the room because there's an emergency going on and only Dedra stays behind, and she looks really nervous here, maybe partly because this is kind of her mission, of course, but maybe because Cyril is involved in it too. He's kind of boots on the ground, if you will. He is in this and potentially something could go wrong for him, but something again tells me it's more about the mission. She knows a lot is riding on this, that, well, what she's been doing for the last year rides on this, so I think that's more why she's nervous than anything to do with poor Cyril. There is then going to be a lot of intercutting back and forth between the party and the heist, so instead of kind of going back and forth with it, I'm just going to cover one at a time. I'm going to start with the party, where we see Mon Mothma and Luthen have a little conversation where Mon is like, hey, I haven't heard from my cousin in a while. Maybe you could tell her to check in. And Luthen is like, well, what's so important that you need to tell her? And Mon is simply, she's my cousin. I care about her. It's not a matter of me having to tell her something. It's a matter of me wondering where she is and if she's okay and just wanting to see her. Again, Luthen does not think in terms of individuals and what they want. He thinks in terms of what needs to be done for the greater good. We then see Clea grab Alani and say, hey, you need to come help me with something. We'll just pretend we're kind of flirting, and I'm going to show you my favorite piece. And don't worry, Luthen will let everybody over there know that this was a favorite piece of yours and you were sad to see it go. So you're just kind of visiting it and telling Lonnie about it over there. No big deal. All the while, she's, of course, trying to remove the listening device. It's a very tense scene. We at one point see her hand is starting to bleed, and she's just describing the whole time this. Basically, it's a piece of pottery that also acts as a story. It's like a book that is in a pottery form that you can read with your finger. Cool, interesting stuff, but again, it's more about the tension that is happening as she's trying to remove this listening device, all the while Director Krennic is right over there, as Alani at one point kind of mentions, like, do you know who is in this room right now? Do you know how much trouble we could get into? Speaking of Krennic, him and Mon Mothma have a bit of a verbal confrontation. They are discussing one of the pieces, which is from the Carmine people, and there was a revolution at one point, and you can kind of see how Mon and Krennic have different point of views on this confrontation from the past. One sees the Carmine people as being the victims, as being more like rebels who are just defending their homeworld, whereas Krennic sees them as insurgents who were more like terrorists than anything else. And it's just great how you can see the different points of view. You can feel the tension between these two. They obviously don't like each other all too much. At one point, Mon even mentions how it's nice to not see you in a committee sitting on a witness stand, basically, because you get called in probably quite often by the Senate to explain yourself. Anyway, eventually they work their way over. This little group works their way over to the piece where Lonnie and Clea were. And Krennic is like, so, this is your favorite piece. Why don't you tell me about it? And, like Clea had warned Alani, you may be tested on this because as she's trying to remove the listening device, she's explaining the piece to him so that if they are tested, he can fill in and make it just seem like, yeah, it was just a casual conversation. And so after Krennic asks about the piece, it's Alani then who chimes in and says it's a book. And he begins to go into the history because, again, they were just having a chat about a piece of history about this artifact. After all this, then, we see Clea and Luthen leaving the party, and she shows him that, yes, I got the listening device out of there, and he's like, my face hurts from smiling too much, and she's like, hey, it was worth it, we got what we came for. And then Luthen jokes we should have just killed Krennic while we were up there, which causes Clea to laugh. They're both laughing, and you can feel a little bit of the tension that has been between these two characters for this arc kind of melting away. It's also just needed, I think, every now and then when you live a life like they do, when you lead this kind of double life, to have this moment of just letting go and laughing about something. Meanwhile, back on Gorman, things are going rather smoothly. They manage to disable the transport. They begin to offload it into the tunnel, which leads down to their transport so they can get away. All the while, Cyril is watching and reporting back to Partagaz and Cyril back at ISB headquarters. But of course, everything is not going to go smoothly. Drina, who was the driver, who was already having some issues with them back at the meeting, who didn't want to seem to just listen and follow orders. She is helping an old woman who kind of stumbled upon the scene. She's helping an old woman head home. And of course, Cinta and Val are kind of a little worried about this, that she's disappeared or wandered off. So Cinta is going to go looking for her. or I should say Val is going to go looking for her while Cinta collects the fuses. But that's when the guy from the meeting back in the first arc, the very passionate guy, he kind of shows up and is like, what the hell's going on here? The other resistance member, who was told specifically not to bring a weapon, of course, has brought a weapon. He brought a blaster. He pulls the blaster on the guy, tells him, hey, this is some serious stuff. You got to get out of here. And the guy's like, what is that, a toy? Like, I'm not getting out of here. And of course, the blaster accidentally goes off and hits Cinta, which I gotta say, all of this is probably the most contrived Andor, be that season 1 or 2, has felt. And I'm not saying it's bad or I'm upset or I hate it or anything like that. You can certainly argue this just shows the randomness of war, that bad things can just happen. But everything here feels very kind of rushed with Cinta, how she comes back, like something bad has happened, we don't know what it is. Something that has changed her, and now it seems like, oh, they're going to get together, Val and Cinta are going to get together, they're going to be happy. And then we have the scene where, obviously, the Resistance is not going to just follow orders, they're going to do something. And then, sure enough, something happens. One of the Resistance members does something stupid, and it costs Cinta her life. Again, I'm not complaining, I don't think it's bad, I just think this is a result of having to take what was initially going to be an entire season's worth of stories, and condensing them down into 3 episodes. Something tells me that if this arc had been an entire season, we probably would have seen whatever happened to Cinta. We would have had more setup, and thus the payoff would have felt better, because this does feel, again, it feels a little cheap, a little quick, a little too obvious, especially for a show that very carefully sets things up, and you can always see one domino tipping over another and another. In this case, it's just all the dominoes kind of fell over at once, it feels like. Again, I am not complaining. It's fine. I'm just saying that when something like this happens in Andor, in a show that is otherwise very, very well written, it does maybe stick out a little bit like a sore thumb. Either way, the mission has been a success. They have managed to steal quite a few of these crates, and they're now getting away. And Partagaz is telling Cyril that we're going to call in the response team. They're obviously going to be late. They're going to come in very loud to let the Resistance know that they are on their way so that they can make that clean getaway. It is all a part of the plan. Then, while on the transport escaping, the young man who accidentally shot Cinta, he is crying, and Val is obviously quite angry at him, trying to tell him, like, you don't get to cry. You're going to remember this for the rest of your life, that your stupidity got someone that you wish you could be killed, that you are going to wear this like skin, you are going to carry this with you forever, you are going to try to make up for this for the rest of your life. And it's all a rather heartbreaking scene. It's Val's turn to get a nice little speech in there. And we now have to wonder what happens to Val. I mean, remember, the only reason Cinta was here was because of Val, because Val requested her. The only way she was going to do it was if Cinta was here. And, well, Cinta was here for her, and now she's dead. And so it's just another tragic scene. It is tragic because sometimes stupid things happen. People do stupid things. People make dumb choices. As I always say, Star Wars is about choices, and this guy made the choice to bring a blaster despite being told not to, and this was the result. The episode then closes out with another scene that maybe does feel a bit rushed, or is another casualty or unfortunate reality of condensing an entire season into just a couple episodes. We see Gorst at this facility, this naval facility on Coruscant, where he has kind of been reassigned. And sure enough, Bix is there waiting for him, and as soon as he sees Bix, he's like, I know you. How do I know you? Which is kind of sad, isn't it? That you tortured her. You tried to destroy her life, and you don't even remember her face. In fact, the last thing he is able to say before she gags him is, how do I know you? And that's when she says, don't worry, it'll only feel like forever, which is what he once said to her, and that's when it all clicks, exactly who she is and what's about to happen to him. He's about to hear some screams of dying children. He is about to have it cranked up to 11 as well. We then see Bix walking out. She shoots a random Imperial officer or guard, whatever he was, and that kind of conflicts with what she was upset about earlier when Cassian sort of did the same thing, shot someone who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. She even couldn't forget his face, and something tells me this isn't the first random Imperial she's going to kill, not the first face she's going to forget. Not too much unlike how Gorst forgot her face, you could argue. And so this is the evolution of Bix. This is what Cassian wanted, in a manner of speaking. She's now ready to work with him. She's now ready to do whatever must be done. She's strong enough, or trying to prove she's strong enough. We'll see just how strong she is as we go on, I suppose. She then meets up with Cassian, they press a button, and there's an explosion. The whole lab that was a setup for this experiment, this Dr. Gorst initiative, whatever you want to call it, has been taken out. Which again, maybe feels a bit quick. Again, maybe if this is a longer season, or this arc is a whole season, this gets explored a lot more. It's probably an entire story arc, or part of an entire story arc. But instead, it gets wrapped up here, and we now move on to the next story arc. But this one, this episode, this arc, was, I think, pretty damn good, pretty fantastic. It was all about relationships when you really stop and think about it. We had Val and Cinta. We saw how that ended. They wanted to work together, or Val wanted to work together, and it kind of went south. We now have Bix and Cassian, who have been working together and seem like they're going to continue to work together, and something tells me this is eventually going to go south. There's then also Dedra and Cyril, where, again, Cyril is kind of being used as a pawn by Dedra, and he has no clue what he is being a part of, and something tells me, yeah, that relationship in the end is also going to go south. Heck, there's even Perrin and Mon, and something tells me in the next arc when Mon walks away from the Senate when she makes her big speech that something is going to happen to Perrin as well. I know he has some friends in the Empire, so maybe he won't be in trouble, I don't know. Maybe he'll be taken in for questioning. We don't know what's going to happen to Perrin. Very curious to see what happens to Perrin. I feel like an emphasis has kind of been put on him this season. Maybe not a huge one. I'm not saying he's like a central character. But certainly he has been a bit more in the spotlight because I think they're trying to set something up with him. And I'm very curious to see what that something will end up being. But for now, that's all I got for you this time. So it's your turn. Take to the comments below and tell me what you thought about this 6th episode, or what you think of this second story arc overall, or where you think any of these relationships are going, who is going to get a happy ending, or how is all of this going to end sadly, which seems more likely. Whatever the case may be, though, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.